Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
I call to order the meeting of the Committee of 2024 at first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item of business is the roll call.
Alder Allen. Present. Mayor Arata Frada.
Here.
Alder Dantzler. Alder Gerhardt.
Here.
Alder Herbst.
Here.
Alder Jetzer. Here. Alder Maldonado. Here. Alder Baffadari.
Here.
Alder Wheeler.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Wonderful. The next item of business is the approval of minutes. I will need a motion on the September 25th, 2024 minutes for the Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Second.
Motion approved made by Alder Allen, seconded by Maldonado. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is 5, public appearances for non-agenda items. There's nobody in the room and there's nobody online, so we can move on to item 6, agenda items. Item 6A, 2025 proposed budget amendments process introduction by our finance director. You have the floor.
So included in the packet was a link to the city's website where you can download the packet of all of the council proposed amendments and the omnibus amendments. So we'll go through those tonight. The purpose of tonight is to have all of the discussion so that everybody is prepared to vote at the next council meeting with relatively minimal discussion, so that we can, keep it very organized. So tonight's like your information gathering stage. So ask all the questions you need to make sure that you understand what the proposed amendment is doing and what its purpose is and all of that. Then when we get to council, there'll be limits as far as how many times you can speak, how long we can speak, and then you can make changes to the amendment. So you can amend the amendment, but we can't bring anything brand new from the floor. So after we go through the amendments tonight, we will talk a little bit about that process too, which we'll also vote on at the next meeting. For this, wanted to show you the packet. So it's available out on the website. There's a summary document in here. That's not loading. So the first page is a cover. The second page is a summary of them, and it shows you by each amendment what the impact is on expenditure restraint, which I'll remind you is not an issue at all this year, and then the impact on the levy limits. And then it also will calculate at the bottom what the average home value would be, or tax impact would be if the amendments are all approved. So I'm gonna stop sharing and see if I can figure out how to get my PDF to start working. Over that.
And all of that is in tonight's agenda packet as well.
Okay. So that's all I have for intro.
Wonderful. So we can move on to the next item, item 6B, 2025 proposed budget amendments. And as Misty said, this is a discussion only. We can start in the order that they are presented. There's only one amendment by an alder, and then the rest are omnibus amendments that I believe Misty will cover. So first item to discuss is amendment number 1. From me, increase MMSD sewer charges and related rate revenues. And by MMSD, that means the Madison Metropolitan Sewer District, not the school district. Misty, do you actually want to cover this? Misty drafted this amendment.
Sure, I can. So between the time when the mayor's proposed budget went out, or at least was near final, and the time that amendments were due, we heard back from MMSD about their proposed increases to the sewer charges that are there, and it was a little bit more than what we thought it might be. So the amendment that's presented would be to increase the pass-through charge that we would pay to MMSD, and that would result in an increase in rates for everybody that basically pays that back through. So it's an equal increase in revenue and an increase in expenses based on MMSD's budget. The one new thing that happened today, we got an email from MMSD that they revised their budget proposal. So the increase was originally gonna be 6% overall, and it's been revised down to 5.2%. I won't know the exact impact that is to Fitchburg until the end of the month when they pass their budget. But by the time it comes to adoption night in a couple of weeks, we will likely be able to amend that amendment down to reflect the most recent numbers from MMSD. But it doesn't impact the levy, though the full amount would be recovered through rates.
This come before Board of Public Works before council vote on it. Normally something like this is reviewed by Board of Public Works. And we're meeting on November 4th.
So I don't believe this is generally reviewed by Public Works, I can verify, but this is just MMSD's pass-through to us of all of their budget charges.
Well, we review the rates.
The rates are different. So the rate setting process, it's kind of two pieces. The first piece is the pass-through of MMSD charges. Under ordinance, we are allowed to just implement those administratively. So they wouldn't go through Board of Public Works, but we're happy to share them with you so you know what they are. The other kind of part of our rates would be the city's costs that also need to be included in those rates. That we would go through a study and would definitely go through Board of Public Works before those would be approved. And we are planning to do a rate study in 2025. So you'll see it then.
But this will change our rates.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is basically a pass-through.
So I would like to have it on the agenda for Board of Public Works on the 4th.
Well, for what is the goal to have it? Because we need to approve it, we don't have any, we don't control this.
We'll approve it on the
But we don't have
next
control.
council. The next council, we're not approving anything tonight.
Yeah, well, so.
I know, but what you're gonna change at night with this
Board of Public Works is aware of this. We're
Strictly information.
I think it's just a discussion item.
information. Yes, I'm not intend to vote on it, but this is under our purview. And
So would you like it as a discussion item on?
that's exactly that's all I'm asking.
My only request is that MMSD doesn't pass their budget till October 31st. So I might not have the information that you want to know on the 4th, but when we do go through the exercise to set the rates, I'm happy to bring them to you, which will just be likely your December meeting instead. Does that work?
November, we meet on the 4th, so.
And you're not gonna have.
I don't think I'll have.
There's a weekend between the 31st and the 4th.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you're proposing a 6% increase. We should know that what that number would be, even if it moves down.
I guess, so the 6% is an upper limit. So if you just put that on the agenda and say it's gonna be something between, something under 6, probably in the neighborhood of 5.2 or whatever, that's.
So the average household would see.
I think the best thing that we can put on the agenda for discussion only is the current amendment that we have. And if Misty has any updated information available at that time, we can certainly include it. But since this is discussion only and there's no action being taken on it, I think we just include what was included in the committee of the whole packet here / upcoming operating budget. And if we do have additional information, we'll be sure to update the packet accordingly.
Fair enough, Chad.
Thank you.
And these increases will continue, because I know that there's a long-term plan to increase these costs, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, but for now, for this coming year, the city portion of that sewer rate remains the same. Correct.
And, and Chad and I, we sat on those meetings, and they when they proposed the first draft of the budget, it came with a lot of fat, that they're removing a lot of the position, they were planning to add a lot of position, and some of the municipalities say, no, you know what I mean? you need to, and I think this is the changes that I saw, that they are removing some of the position, and yeah.
Yeah, they went from 6 positions originally proposed to 2 based upon feedback. They've delayed a couple of projects, also based upon feedback. They made a couple other budget reductions, again, based upon feedback from the municipalities who are member communities of the district. It's a positive development. I think all of us also recognize that even 5.2% is a fair number as far as a fair number on the high end. You know, inflation has been last 12 months a little bit over 3. Obviously, the mayor's proposed budget is just a hair above inflation at 3.3, 3.4%. So there's been a commitment by our council and the mayor, obviously, to trend more closely to inflation and MSD. Original proposal was more than double inflation.
It seems like once upon a time, Fitchburg had a representative on the MMSD board. Do we still have one?
There are 3 representatives that serve the Dane County cities and villages. They're appointed by the Dane County cities and villages. We just voted on one of the members whose term was up. That member was replaced by a new member that had been nominated by the city of Verona. And there is still a retired City of Fitchburg employee who is one of the appointees from the Dane County cities and villages. Tom Hubble on the commission, and I'm drawing a blank on who the other community, what other community nominated the third one, but there was a recent change based upon election at the Dane County cities and villages.
Well, Tom was he was our planning director, right? But he lives in McFarland.
He does.
I just wondered if we had anybody from the city of Fitchburg on that board.
No.
At this time.
How many members are on the board?
I'll look that up. I think it's 9, but I'm not positive.
It's a lot of commitment to be in that board, to be honest.
Do you want to carry on while I look that up? Unless there are other questions?
Any other questions in regards to this item? Seeing none, besides an update from Chad that's forthcoming, I think we can move on to Omnibus Amendment number A, or Omnibus Amendment A, add referendum items, police staffing. Misty?
Thank you. So there are 7 total omnibus amendments included in the packet. If you don't mind, I'd like to kind of talk broadly about all of them, rather than kind of individually and then take all the questions at the same time. So there are 7 total. 6 of them are all of the items that were included in the proposed referendum. So you'll see those numbers tie out to the different information that's been shared. I split it in kind of the main categories. So police staffing, other staffing, police facility, the other operating costs, and transit. So those are the 6 different omnibus amendments. And I purposely split them out just so you could kind of see the different buckets and that they tied out, but all 6 of them are related to the referendum. If the referendum passes, we will adopt that into the budget. If the referendum does not pass, I will withdraw those 6 omnibus amendments because you obviously can't add them if it's not approved. The 7th omnibus amendment is one that we've done all of the past years, which is, it's basically an expenditure restraint strategy. So right now there's a transfer out of the general fund to the capital projects fund aligned with the adopted CIP. Basically think of it like transferring from checking to savings. That transfer amount can be adjusted up or down in order to make sure that we comply with expenditure restraint, but also maintain any capacity that we don't need with this budget in that calculation. So if the referendum is approved, the transfer that's in there currently needs to go down by a little bit so that we continue to comply with expenditure restraint. If the referendum is not approved, we will increase that transfer in order to retain that capacity for future budgets and just be able to continue to qualify for that program as long as possible. So that one I do request some flexibility in it. It'll be based on the final numbers, obviously from the referendum, but then also working with the state and the county, figuring out all of those different calculations. So once we get to the adoption part, I included in the notes that I'd like the authority to make the adjustment as needed to meet the goals of complying with expenditure restraint exactly.
how much is the expenditure restraint for this year?
So it's, yep, so it's based on qualifying for it in 1 year's budget, and then you get the payment the following year.
Yeah.
So the payment that we receive in 2025, it'll be about $650,000.
Okay.
But then it drops pretty significantly in the following year because it's based on how much your tax rate is over $5. And then I also don't know what our tax rate will be because the referendum is kind of in flux still. So generally it's somewhere in the 400 to 650,000, but it has been dropping pretty significantly as our rate drops, but then also those TID closures dropped our rate too.
Any questions about the omnibus amendments?
So specifically the transfer, it says this is an amount that keeps the city within the existing fund balance policy, but it's a transfer out of the general fund. So this keeps us from having too much in the general fund?
So that comment means I want a budget for the exact amount based on expenditure restraint strategy, but I will only actually transfer out the amount that allows us to still be within the general fund balance policy. So let's say the referendum fails and we budget for another $3 million transfer out to kind of retain that capacity. I won't transfer $3 million out if it allows us to violate our fund balance policy.
Okay.
So I'll only transfer it if it's above the policy amount. Does that make sense?
I think so. And where do we sit right now? Because the policy is 15 to 25%, right? And we purposely burned it down last year somewhat.
Yeah.
Where do we sit right now?
So I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head. As of the end of the year, we were just barely over, just barely under the 25%. In the 2025 budget document, we project out what fund balance is going to be, and it was right around that percentage again too. We're still within policy, but kind of on the high end of policy.
Great. I don't see any additional questions. Give a moment just in case. All right, so that wraps the amendment discussion in possibly record time. So we've had very long nights discussing amendments, so that's pretty impressive.
Even with a tangent on the MMSD stuff.
I
do have an, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, the other thing that I want to mention in page 2, even with the our estimate AV tax rate, even with the if the referendum passes, it's going to be 645. It's going to be lower to last year. Last year was 7.65.
Which would make sense,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because as assessments go up, your mill rate
So,
by math will generally go down.
But I want to mention that.
Yep. I'll also note, thank you for mentioning it, if you don't mind, Chair. There's some items that were highlighted on those summaries because we didn't have final numbers from the state. We did get those last week, Friday, and my estimates were really, really, really close. So I'll have the final numbers all populated when we discuss this at the council meeting, but it's really, really close to what is in that packet as estimated.
8 commissioners on MMSD. I sent you a link to the MMSD website, so if you want to see the names and who appointed them and any bio information on them, it's all on that link.
Thank you, Chad.
There is an opening next year and you want to be in the board, let us know.
All right, so we can move on.
I did have another question. So I was looking through some of the details here, evidently not closely enough, but I did notice that some of the new positions have, close to $100,000 in one-time and or non-personnel or recurring costs, and others, $3,000 or $5,000. I suppose if I read the whole thing, I'm going to find out why, but maybe if you can give me a high-level overview of that.
Yep. So the full detail is in the mayor's proposed budget. So there'd be a form that was provided that gives all the specifics.
Okay.
But in general, it's the police positions that have that large one-time cost for the related squad car and the equipment that they need.
Okay.
Great. So I think we can move on to item 6C, which is a discussion on Resolution R-17824, adopting special rules for the 2025 budget adoption. And for clarification, this is just a discussion. We will take action at the council meeting. Missy?
So this doesn't necessarily apply this year after all, considering that the one council amendment doesn't impact levy limits and the omnibus amendments are all tied to the referendum, but wanted to just kind of follow the same process as what we've usually done. So in general, when we go through the budget process, especially in recent years, we've struggled to make sure that we comply with levy limits, and we wanted to have the opportunity to go back and re-vote on amendments if we needed to still comply with levy limits. So there's ordinance rules as far as how budget adoption night goes, and then there's these supplemental procedures that allow us to then go back and re-vote. So the process that's still proposed is essentially the same as what we've done the last few years. The one redlined recommendation I made is when we go back and discuss possibly the second time. Originally, I had it in for 10-minute increments. The ordinance original amendment rules is only 5 minutes, so I'm not sure why those didn't match. So recommend making that also a 5-minute increment. One, to be consistent with the first time around, and then two, if this is our second discussion, it doesn't seem that you would need more time to discuss than the original discussion. So that was my one recommendation as a tweak, but ultimately it's up to the council how you want to proceed. We will adopt this on budget adoption night kind of as our first step, just so everybody understands kind of what the rules are for the evening before we go into the amendment process.
Questions on this? Pretty easy this
I
year.
have a quick question.
Let's go, Nicole.
Is this markedly different than years past, or is it just the change that you made, Misty, regarding not having more time the second time?
So it's exactly the same as years past, other than changing it from 10 to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what made this meeting so long, because we discussed at length in this meeting, and then at the council meeting we limited, because we've had upwards of 30 amendments, and if we spend too much time on each one, it is a very long night. So that's why it was a good process. Seeing no other questions or comments, I believe we can move on to agenda item 6D, Greenfield and South Stoner Prairie Neighborhood Plan updates from our city planner, Deanna Schmidt.
Thank you.
And we'll let her get set up.
Thank you, Mr.
Everything I need, anything, you guys can put me on. Well, thank you all for having us. Brad is here too via Zoom to just kind of go over a status report of where we are with the neighborhood plans and get any feedback and thoughts and comments that you might have as we continue moving through our process. So I'll walk through just briefly some of where we are at this particular point, talk a little bit about the South Stoner Prairie Neighborhood Plan and then the Greenfield Neighborhood Plan. As I go through some of my slides, feel free to ask questions. I'll try to address your questions the best that I can, and Brad is here to really answer the right questions. So just to date, I wanted to give a little of an update of where we are in terms of the community engagement. Staff and our consultant, MSA, has did a significant amount of community engagement on the two neighborhood plans. And this just gives you a brief update, right? So 2 open houses. The first open house was a joint open house, separate open house in March for South Stoner and then Greenfield. We had an online map that was a great way for the public to offer their comments and thoughts, and some online surveys and stakeholder interviews, and then we also did a development focus group. You'll notice that the Greenfield list is a little bit longer, and that is because we have held 2 neighborhood meetings. The first one was a visioning kickoff way back at the beginning of the year in January, and then we did another feedback meeting in April. So just a quick overview of what we've been doing in terms of community engagement to date. Overview, so we're working on the 2 neighborhood plans, as you know, and what the process is here is that we will work to complete those plans in conjunction with the community and council, and hopefully bring these 2 neighborhood plans forward. And what we do in Fitchburg is adopt those neighborhood plans as part of our overall comprehensive plan. I just want to say a couple of words, because we keep on getting questions and concerns. The neighborhood plans are not zoning, but we use these neighborhood plans in planning and with Plan Commission and with council when there's requests for rezones, land divisions, a conditional use permit. So what's the neighborhood plans doesn't change anything with how people can use their land or what they can do, and it doesn't make them sell their land for development. It is just that, a future land use guide and document for when developers or others wish to develop and change the use. So South Stoner, we have feeling pretty confident and about a preferred land use here for South Stoner. I will just kind of walk through briefly where we are at in the major land use categories. And we are proposing 2 major kind of collectors, Collector A and then Collector B. And then Commerce Park Drive would extend from the north across Lacey. So Lacey, if that's, you can kind of orientate yourself, is up here. And so what you'll see here is up at the intersection of Lacey and the Commerce Park would be mixed use. And that would be a mix of commercial and then higher density residential. The purplish color is business park and the darker brown is high density residential. To where you see the hashes, we are proposing that this area could be either business park or high density residential. The reason that we're proposing that bit more flexibility has to do with the current land uses. You might recall that this entire area is actually being quarried. The Yahara company is quarrying this area, and then this is all Payne and Dolan quarry. So this is where staff has a tricky point here, because the 2 quarries are going deeper and down and taking out stone, but they're not at a point where they agree to remove the rock wall between them. So staff is showing a couple of different options. If that rock wall, which literally would set approximately in this location, if we can reach some agreement with the 2 quarry operators to take that rock wall down, then this entire area makes sense to do business park. If that does not happen, then it's going to make sense to leave this area to the west of the rock wall as high density.
Can you describe this rock wall? This is the first I've heard of it. I haven't driven over
I'll try to walk through here. These are the 2 quarries.
Okay.
This is the Yahara quarry. We approved this as a conditional use permit in early 2023. And each quarry comes through and has a restoration plan, and they have a plan for how much stone they're going to take out and where. So you can kind of get a sense of that restoration plan. They're showing contours that they would fill up. They would remove the stone in this area and then fill up to that rock wall.
How tall is this wall?
It will vary, 50 or 60 feet in some places.
50 feet high?
Yeah.
They're digging down that far. So they're gonna fill with what?
Well, when they quarry, they remove the overburden and the stuff that they can't do. And currently, right now, Payne and Dolan is filling in their portion. They're backfilling their portion as they're moving. Of course, their quarry operations are farther along. What these are showing is the two final grades for what the proposed quarries are. So.
I'm sorry, I can't read that from
Yeah.
So I see the 1040.
Yep, 1040, both are going down about 1040.
I think it's safe to say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Deanna, but that staff will continue to discuss the wall with both operators with the preferred goal of that not remaining.
Well, I mean, either that or have it filled so that it's, so everything's at the same grade. But if you're filling, it's gonna be, if you're filling 50 or 60 feet, it's gonna be years before that's compacted enough to be able to build on.
So they're terracing up to the wall, so they won't be building in the slope.
Yeah, you can kind of see, this would be the final grades, but that's the
but I
approximate.
can't see that from here.
So what's the black line there? So we got 1040 and then there's like.
That's where no stone has been removed. That is.
Well, right, so how many lines are between 1040 and the black line, and what does each line mean? Is that 10 feet?
So approximately, so this is about, that's about 60 feet across here.
So the top of that wall is 1100?
Approximately, yeah. It drops down as we go north, and it meets up with grade. The high point is back here.
How wide is this wall?
Not exactly sure, probably 50 to 100 feet.
That seems like it. Well, then I'm gonna ask the next obvious question. Why is that wall?
Well, I think that's
Why didn't they just excavate to the property line?
Well, Payne and Dolan has pretty much. They are.
Oh, so the wall is on the other side.
And current regulations would not allow Via Era to excavate all the way to the property line anymore.
Really? Well, that's a regulation that needs to change. I mean,
That's a safety issue.
How would they I can't believe having a 50-foot rock wall is safe.
Yeah, it's like I said. I guess I maybe misspoke, but there'll be fill up to the wall, and they will terrace it. It's not like you're gonna.
But then we're proposing building business park there.
That was what we had hoped, that if the wall, if the two property owners can come to an agreement to equalize the grade in a reasonable way, staff and the steering committee and where we have ended up is that this whole area would be business park.
On a 60-foot grade.
Nothing is gonna be built on the wall.
No, I understand, but we're showing a contour at 1040, which is some distance away from the wall. And then we're saying that we're terracing it up to the wall, which is 1,100 feet. So that's 60 feet, that's a 60-foot grade. What am I missing here?
The goal would be that this would all equalize, right? So we would all come down to about 1040 or 1050 all the way across.
But then your comment is that regulations don't allow them to do that?
Right now, I mean, they would have to go back to Dane County for a new approval of their reclamation plan.
Oh, so this is not a statutory requirement. This is something that's in whatever permit they have.
Yeah, they could work this out. But they would have to work together, go back to Dane County on their reclamation plan.
Well, I mean, So, but if Payne and Dolan has already pretty much excavated down to that wall, this isn't really their issue, is it?
It's both of them. They're going to have to agree to manage that cross grading to make a buildable site.
I'm gonna operate on the assumption that Payne and Dolan, while they may be near their property line, they probably had to have some measure of setback, even, 10 feet. So they would probably have some role that would need approval as well to go ahead and take theirs completely down.
We have a question.
And they've also told us that they've been backfilling that for years. So they've been working on, prior to this planning process, they've been working on backfilling all of that. So it's kind of steep on their property still. So
Nicole has a question. Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just to add for those of us who struggle to understand 3D concepts on 2D paper, is the main issue here that there's just a difference in grading, like the height difference will be different. So like you couldn't put a building over where you see that black part or across these different numbers. Is that a fair statement?
Exactly. The grades as shown on this plan would not allow a building to be built across this.
Gotcha.
Across the wall. Across where the wall is now. But you could build on either side of the wall, theoretically.
Right.
Except with a 60-foot grade, that's gonna create some challenges trying to build any kind of building there.
And this whole discussion is predicated on the fact that there's two different property owners and that's the property boundary.
It is.
And so if they get together and work together, that whole wall becomes a non-issue.
It certainly can.
Can we request that be?
I mean,
We will continue.
even the property owners would have to recognize the silliness of not collaborating, right? I mean, it's gonna be to their economic benefit as well.
Yes, both of them gain.
Yeah, I think I think we'll continue to work with them, but I did think it was important to discuss and share with you all the challenges with the current situation with the quarry operations.
What is the timeline on the quarry?
There is no timeline specifically on the Payne and Dolan quarry that I've heard. We have issued a conditional use permit for the operation of this quarry that extends until about the first or second quarter of 2028.
So my next question would be so this obviously has some time before there could be any development. What is the possibility for development, the timeline for the other parts of the future urban development area?
I think there's an interesting question. That's one thing that the engineering team is looking at too, to see if utilities could be extended through future development in this area and then come and start development down here. I don't have a good answer on that at this point, but we're certainly looking at how utilities could shift and come maybe down Fitchburg or down through new development in this area, and then start development here and then work our way back up.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, can you show where the quarries are, like just generally speaking on this map? Can you just like circle it?
Sure. So this is the Yahara quarry. Sorry, it looks kind of strange on my map, but and then this is all the Payne and Dolan quarry.
Okay. So that
you can kind of see the piece of it, and they'll probably still continue to quarry in this area.
Do we have plans like for what the timeline would be to develop that piece of land that's already
that neighborhood?
there? Yeah.
Oh, this one, this area is actually in the urban service area.
Yeah, but is it under development currently, or is it?
No.
No. We have The city council has approved a comprehensive development plan for this area for a mix of housing. That project has been on hold for several years. But it could start again at any point, but it's been on hold.
So is that entire piece between Collector A and Lacey Road? Or is that area that Payne and Dolan you said is gonna still be working on, is that not included in any of these plans?
Yeah, this area is actually in the urban service area, so it's not.
That whole rectangular parallelogram.
Yeah, so it's not included in the neighborhood plan. And we do foresee that quarrying operations will continue, at least for some portion here. We, one of the things that we have talked about, is, I'll come back onto this map. One of the things that we have been working too with the Verona School District is to accommodate their interest in a neighborhood school too. And we had originally hoped that it might work in this kind of area, but given the grades, the timeline. So we're tentatively showing that at some point we could explore a school site in this area. And we're not changing the future land use map at this point in this area. I think this, when we go into the comp plan update, that would be a good time to take a look at that.
Do we
think that's probable in the fact that they just bought land that they'd like to develop not too far from here?
Brad, why don't you take that one, because I think you talked a little bit more with Verona.
Yeah, they have interest in a neighborhood school here. It'd be like an they said it'd likely be an elementary school, maybe a middle, but most likely an elementary school. And I think the land that's in this area, that's further east along Lacey Road, would be a high school. And then the Jamestown, that one's on the other side of Verona Road.
So they're thinking 2 new elementaries in Fitchburg.
That's potentially, yeah. I think the Jamestown one is the timeline is shorter on that. This one they're looking at potentially several years out. So
gotcha.
This one would be, if there's enough development in the area that it would include the South Stoner Prairie area. I think, don't quote me on this, I don't remember the number, but I think it was something around like if there were 600 potential school rooftops here, that they'd be interested in having an elementary school in the neighborhood. So
gotcha. The timing you just explained makes total sense to me. I wasn't factoring that in. Thank you.
Sure. Yep.
So that neighborhood plan that's already been approved, what's the composition of that?
Single family, mostly single family.
So I've never been on a school board, so maybe Nicole can provide some expertise on this. It seems like many of the schools that I see being built get built near single-family residential neighborhoods. And since transportation is such a big cost, it seems like you'd want to place a school in a place where as many children can walk to it as possible. So if that school site ends up there, it's going to be across the street. It's going to be across Collector A, whatever Collector A is, but looks like it's going to be a fairly big, probably a fairly busy road. And it would seem to me that it would make more sense for the elementary school to be built closer to the higher density housing. But that just doesn't seem to be what school boards do. Do you know why that is, Nicole?
Without risking speaking for every school, I think one of the big reasons is, like, even when we were looking, for example, at the Jamestown property, it is massively more expensive to buy per acre than like the Lacey farm was, for example. And a lot of that just had to do with how built up the areas were. So I think it's also that piece in terms of just like land property costs within Dane County. But the school board did like that Jamestown property was probably was markedly more expensive than other ones. But we wanted something that was closer to higher density locations because that is close to like it's walkable from New Fountains, for example. So I think it is that balance. But to your point, it would be ideal, Jay. I think it's just cost. I'm sure there's other reasons too.
Well, right now, I mean, it's all undeveloped land, so picking something to the south of Collector A as the location it just seems to me to make more sense.
Deanna, could you comment?
I think it's a fair question. Yeah, to ask. To your point, sorry, I was misunderstanding.
Deanna, could you comment on the density that is at least proposed here? Because I'm seeing high density residential across the street from the school and to the east of the school, and then the medium density and medium high density. So what's the general units per acre that would be allowed under the medium high and medium density? You know, obviously high density, I won't say unlimited, but there's a higher limit there clearly that we don't need to talk about.
Sure. So high density is in our current comp plan, anything from 9 dwelling units per acre and up. The medium high, as council has passed, is 9 to 20 dwelling units per acre, of course. And then medium density is 5 to 9. So you'll see very little low density residential in this particular iteration. We have tried to push as much of the higher densities to the Lacey corridor to take advantage of potential future transit, and then keeping the higher densities along our 2 major corridors, right? So Lacey, Commerce, and then also along Collector A.
From a visualization standpoint, Deanna, would that medium high and medium density resemble what's in Terra Vesa?
Yes.
Thank you.
It could be small apartment buildings too.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not the only.
I'll add to that. Go ahead.
I hope I'm not the only person who thinks it's a bad idea to put the low density residential along the major transportation corridors. I mean,
that's outside of this plan, though.
Well, right, but I mean, have we talked to the whoever owns that and whatever their plans are, and like, you know, doing a land swap or something? I mean, you wouldn't need something nearly as big as the collector if you simply swapped the high density to the north and put the low density to the south, right? And then you could put your school between them, and then there would be a much smaller road for the kids to cross if they do live to the south of it.
It's good planning, Bill.
Well, okay, but how do we make good planning actually happen?
Well, I mean, we have to, right now, I suppose we could, I can go get the current land use, but, and I can't see.
Well, one thing to consider about this is that this is not going to be the end of Fitchburg. So there's going to continue to be development to the south at some point.
And one other thing to consider too right now is the fact that we only have a comprehensive development plan for that section that is currently in the urban service area. It is our understanding that the current landowner intends to sell that for a developer, and that developer could come forward and amend that comprehensive development plan, which may change what at least has been originally proposed.
How do we expedite that?
Well, it's on the landowner, right? I mean, we can't necessarily.
I think he was approached by a couple of developers that they're the one.
Yeah, there's been
they're
conversations.
having the conversation, you know.
We understand with multiple, potential developers there, but that's ultimately it's property owners' right to do what they would like with their property and sell when they're ready. or develop when they're ready.
When was that CDP approved?
Was last
18 months ago, probably?
Oh, no, it was before me, so maybe 18.
Well, don't those expire after 2 years? Don't they have to be renewed every 2 years?
I don't think the CDPs do. We record those. Those are recorded in the
I was in
records.
plan commission when we
So
approved
it
something
hasn't
there.
been subdivided into lots?
Is that before your time?
No, they haven't planted.
Oh, okay.
They haven't planted.
They just have a CDP.
Yeah. But we record those and.
I'll add too that we in the bubble diagram phase of this, there were options that showed, some mixed use and higher density at the Lacey-Fitrona intersection that kind of integrated that. And there was no interest in changing the existing approved planned low density neighborhood there by the landowner at that time. So we kind of planned the South Stoner Prairie area as if that is going to stay that way, and tried to integrate the neighborhood mixed use and the HDR within the study area, because I guess we're operating under the assumption that stays the way it is. It could change, but there was no interest at the beginning of the process on doing that.
So the comprehensive development plan, did that follow like a comp plan, future land use? Okay, so that's also in the comp plan.
It's low density, mostly low density already in the comp plan, that general area. To the south in the comp plan, it's agriculture still. That's why one of the discussions that we've been having with the landowner is, can we take a new look at all of those future land use uses? And there's been some hesitation. We'll keep on trying to work with them to see if we can move the needle in that entire area.
That would be a good place to.
Because in the north, you have high density in that corner, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep, this is apartments in
This is
here.
so.
So we just spent $8.5 million to upgrade Lacey Road, and we're gonna do another $6 million for a section of Fitrona Road there. Are there impact fees that go along with that for the adjoining property owners to maybe nudge them along?
I don't know if those road projects are tied. Maybe Dave knows a little bit more about that. I don't.
There could be assessments for water or sewer.
It just, again, it seems a shame that we put all that work into the roads, and then who's gonna benefit 7 houses on one street and 6 on another?
We agree that the density should be there, the high density should be in the corner.
I think for the purposes of the conversation tonight, which we're agendaed to talk South Stoner Prairie and Greenfield, so we're deviated a bit. I think clearly the point has been made about what the council may prefer for land use in the area within the urban service area. That will remain in the forefront of staff's mind. And when we do have conversations with that particular property owner, we can continue to try to facilitate that conversation. And we're at the comprehensive development plan stage, which is like stage 1, 2 of a lot of stages. So we are very early in that process.
Thanks for clarifying, Chad. Can we have like very small, short comments to wrap that part up?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the quarry. Do we know what they're quarrying there? It's all limestone, okay.
I have a question about the land use. Can you talk a little bit about the parks and open space and like the rationale behind how that's laid out? Also curious about why there's parks and open space between 2 roads like that. So
in this area?
Yeah, so if you could talk a little bit about.
Oh yeah, this is like the insides and outs of this wonderful plant.
Yeah.
So this here is a different landowner, and this landowner has no intention of quarrying their property. So there's going to be tremendous grade change in this area. So you're right, it's not ideal to have all of that collector A bounded by parks and open space, but that is how we can accommodate the significant grade changes.
Okay.
These are gonna be more for stormwater in this area. That's gonna be the lower point. We're proposing stormwater in this area too.
Okay.
Brad, what am I missing?
Does that piece you were just on, does that have some special characteristic that requires the road to be divided by such a great distance?
That's the low spot there, maybe.
The thought was that could be similar to East Sherrill and how it manages stormwater kind of as a median, and then it would be one way each way there, kind of divided with a greenway in the middle of the road. That was the thinking there. And then that land to the southwest of the neighborhood, the green space there, that's also, that's also stormwater.
So what actual park area is being added for like a neighborhood park or an area park?
At this point,
So it would be
areas are kind of, in general, open space, stormwater management, parks. We haven't got to really determining if it's a neighborhood park or exactly yet.
right.
And these are concepts. It doesn't necessarily mean a developer would come through and propose exactly this.
Oh, come on,
this
that's what
layout.
they always do. They always come in and put it exactly the way we
No, don't
planned.
worry, because then we come and with minor amendment, we change everything, so.
Can you tell me why the neighborhood mixed use isn't really next to the neighborhood?
The neighborhood mixed use is, it's the mix of commercial and high-density residential. So we believed that putting that up on Lacey
so
made
that's-
a lot of sense.
So that's vertical mixed use. Okay.
That's not really gonna be like neighborhood retail though.
Unlikely.
We should, to try to make this a more complete neighborhood, I wonder why we didn't include a neighborhood mixed use type of retail area where, where there might be some first floor retail.
I mean, it certainly can be in the neighborhood mixed use, right? That is where that would go, would be any sort of first floor office. And that's where that's kind of a catch-all kind of thing for whatever is going to be workable for. It could be commercial on the first floor, residential on the top.
Well, yeah, but I'm thinking if I'm living down near collector B and collector C, and I want to go to an ice cream shop or a hair salon or a neighborhood bar or something like that, where could something like that go under the categories that we put up here on this map?
I think one thing to consider, well, two things to consider actually, might be the fact that a retail or commercial location may prefer to have the visibility that Lacey Road provides them to make their business more potentially viable. And ultimately, I think there could be a connection made that the neighborhood mixed use, while still a bit away from the existing neighborhood, could also potentially serve both of those neighborhoods. And also, if the Edgewood campus develops immediately to the east, you kind of are starting to fill in the whole neighborhood, and that has some more central location, or at least slightly more central location than it currently shows when you look at it exclusively as part of the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood.
Yeah, I get that, but if we're trying to if we've actually bought in as a city to the idea of complete neighborhoods, then we need to have other options than, I mean, that's probably from the southwest corner, that's probably a mile walk. And that's a long way to go for, certain types of neighborhood amenities. And I don't want to sit here and propose what we should go out and recruit, but I think through our neighborhood planning process, we should be putting elements in these things that encourage developers to go with that kind of model, rather than using a model that basically says we're going to put the apartments here and the houses here. and the retail can go somewhere else that people can drive to.
Well, we can certainly look at how there could be some flexibility on the southwest side to incorporate some, if the opportunity came up, right, if there was an opportunity that a developer was interested in having that kind of mix, we can look for, see if something like that would work.
But theoretically, like something like the Rusty Bee, where it's being incorporated into an apartment building,
Right.
that could happen in an HDR area, or is that not
Would that
possible?
happen
Would that
in
be
an
PUD? I mean, would that be just?
Well, so that area is all smart code. So that falls under a totally different set of rules.
But is it possible for our code to like allow for mixed use?
I think we're going that direction. We talked about in Plan Commission some code changes in high density residential zoning that would allow some commercial.
Yeah.
And so staff's
And
been.
hopefully that ordinance revision is coming soon. Even though the proposal we were writing it for is gone.
Yeah, I think staff's still working on bringing that forward. I think Plan Commission felt pretty comfortable with it, and so there would be two pieces that, so allowing some commercial and high density, and then allowing a bit more opportunities for more residential and business general. So
Maybe
theoretically, I think we're moving towards, and especially as we go through the comp plan process, I think we're moving towards shifting away from thinking about uses totally as our primary focus and thinking about a more form-based code that would allow to incorporate some more mixed.
Right, but this looks very Euclidean.
It does, because we are very Euclidean in our comp plan.
I understand that, but I guess I'd like.
But there's also an awful lot of good stuff in the comp plan about
Yeah.
Policy of building compact walkable neighborhoods, and I don't see anything on here except for transportation for motor vehicles. Where do the people go? Are there safe transportation routes for anybody who's not in a car?
Mm-hmm. So that's what we're proposing in the dashed red lines. Those are the proposed trails that would be interconnecting in the neighborhood.
Like a bike trail or multi-use
Multi-use
path?
trails.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. But I think Bill's comment is still valid, that we need to be thinking in the broader terms of how do we make neighborhoods where people don't have to get into a car and drive to most of the places they might want to drive to. I don't know if there's something, I don't know if you can, because there'll obviously be, we have this map, but that's not the plan. There's going to be, pages of text and narrative. So maybe in the text and narrative, you could put some other things in there that would say the city would encourage building a walkable neighborhood with some type of walkable destinations for the neighborhood. I mean, I get what you're saying about, up on Lacey Road, some businesses might want to be right on Lacey Road so everyone can see them. But some businesses don't need that amount of business. They, Chocolate Shop isn't a good example because that's where they run all their catering out of. But, for them, visibility is probably more of an issue. But I had questions about the way we built that anyway, because we basically took the neighborhood retail, which at the time was just one bar, and we put it as far away from the center of the neighborhood as we could possibly conceive doing. And that just didn't seem consistent with what we were even talking about doing then, which was 20, 25 years ago. So if there's some way that we can, even up in Terra Vesa, we've got a couple of businesses there that are within walking distance of a whole lot of people. And they aren't, the wine bar is not a big business, so they don't necessarily need to have 500 people coming in every night. 20 or 30 is probably plenty.
Yeah, and I think to Deanna's point and Gabriella's point earlier, the HDR along Collector A through subsequent zoning code revisions and the ultimate full comp plan and following full zoning code update will ideally accommodate those just by right potentially.
Sure. I guess what I'm still irritated about to no end is that when we did the Nine Springs neighborhood plan, Swan Creek Apartments, which is the two buildings that are at the corner of Sherrill Parkway and Sain Road, in the neighborhood plan that we put together, we said in there that we wanted to have neighborhood retail in the lower level of those buildings. And the developer who owned the property didn't want to do it, he didn't want to do it, he didn't want to do it, and he saved those buildings for last. And after all the people were gone from the council, he went in and had the comp plan changed so that he didn't have to build it. And now it's been built over in Terra Vesta, and those businesses are doing well. So, I mean, it's a concept that can work and works all over the country. It just feels like with the way this is drawn that we're kind of shutting that out and not really providing the opportunity or the encouragement to do that. So
I think
my question.
I'm sorry.
My question is sometimes when I hear about the walkable city. Okay, so you got two bars over there. I was just looking at my old neighborhood in Philly. And I mean, one way I go, there's a corner store where I can pick up stuff that, you know, we need for dinner that night.
Sure.
The other way I can get a cheesesteak and Italian nights. Got buses there. So when I hear about Walkie City has this retail there, how do you get the retail in there so it is a true walkable city? I mean, because saying just, we got two bars over here, that's not, to me, walkable.
Well, the way you do it is by building the density, because when you have enough bodies, then the businesses, if a business can locate somewhere and there's 3,000 people living within a half a mile, that's plenty of people to draw from to keep a small business like a corner store open. If you go into downtown Madison, there's at least 3 or 4 corner stores that are just, you know, they're in the middle of a whole bunch of people, and so it makes it viable for those kind of businesses to exist.
Deanna, could you comment on Jim's question as well, from your perspective?
I think history matters. You know, Philly has neighborhoods that are well over 100 years old.
True.
And the infrastructure in place to do that kind of thing. So the history in the long term matters. And I think we have just struggled in Nine Springs to find that developer that can do that right mix. You know, I know Verona is pushing to have the first floor retail and commercial. Much of it's empty. You know, and so I think the city has tried to find the right developers. It just takes time and getting that density too.
Well,
it seems like part of
it's an
it's
evolution, right?
Yeah.
You know, Philly didn't necessarily have that in every neighborhood as it was formed, and over time, as it continues to grow, evolve, redevelop, you know, those sorts of things come along, and I think, you know, it's certainly an admirable goal, and we'll continue to work for it. And to Jay's earlier point, we'll put some language in the text that indicates that it is the city's desire for these sorts of things to be, you know, located throughout the neighborhood, you know, to a certain degree. You know, but it is generally going to be an evolution in a lot of situations.
And I think a good example is Hilldale didn't become Hilldale. It is today, except by being a suburban mall for most of my lifetime.
Yeah, and then they tore down a bunch of houses and built a bunch of 12-story buildings.
Yep.
And that's what makes those things. And one of the problems, and I would agree with you that one of the problems we're having in Uptown is the developer who owns most of that property doesn't have the pockets to build a 12-story building. So he's got to go out and find a partner or two to bring in that can make that happen. It's not that it can't happen, it's just it takes a lot of money to do it. I mean, you know, and so we're getting these 3- and 4-story buildings which kind of work. I mean, you know, Rusty B's pretty busy. I go there often enough, and it's pretty busy with just the people who are living there. But Verona's problem, in my view, is they've never built the density. Verona has specifically avoided building density until just recently. And the density they're building is not where those first floor retail spots are. So when you drive down Verona Avenue, you see those empty storefronts, and it's because they're on, I mean, it's like building something like that on Lacey Road.
Let's start wrapping this up.
Gee, I'm disappointed at you bad-mouthing my favorite mathematician, Euclides.
Not at all.
I'd be interested, and I don't think we need to explore this right now, but I'd be interested to know if other cities ever incentivize small businesses like that to develop through tax breaks or anything of that nature, because obviously running a small business is very expensive. And if we want it to come, we should incentivize it.
Absolutely.
So that may be something that we should look into if we truly want those in our neighborhoods, which I think we do. Anyway, we don't have to explore that right now, but I just wanted to bring it up as something that.
Oh, we do. You have to explore it now.
Any other comments about the map? This map?
Where's the pedestrian mall?
We have not put a particular pedestrian mall in there right now.
I think they're not going to exist in 10, 20 years.
The pedestrian mall is the heart of the walkable neighborhood. And if we think that a walkable neighborhood is something desirable, which I do, I mean, why don't we build one from the get-go instead of waiting for, building something and then hoping that it's going to evolve later?
I guess I need to just be clear, we don't build it, right? The developers build it.
Right, but I mean, we can tell people what we're looking for, right?
We certainly can tell them what we're looking for, yeah.
The last question I had, sorry, is the only place where there's going to be a potential for small businesses would be in the place that's zoned neighborhood mixed use? Or could small businesses be anywhere in this equation?
Yeah, I think that's what we were kind of exploring here. Right now, the neighborhood mixed use is specifically tailored for that. But if we move forward as a city with the updates to the zoning code, theoretically, that could happen in the high density residential also.
Okay.
Great. So we have another neighborhood plan to tackle. Is there anything else you wanted to add on this one, Deanna?
Oh, yeah, I have a question. When are you planning to finalize this one?
We are working on that. Brad is working closely with MSA to figure out what is the soonest we can get it all wrapped up.
And when is soon? As soon as the end of the year, or
No, I've asked to see if we can get a draft by the end of the year. The problem that we have is we need to adopt this as part of the comp plan. So we need to go through that same process as we do for our minor comp plan amendments. So, which means I need a 30-day notice for a public hearing at Plan Commission, and then we need to have that 30-day notice.
So if we need to incorporate in the comp plan, why do we need to, can we finish the, like have a draft of the plan, and then when we do the comp plan, we incorporate that? You know what I mean? So why do we need to go through all these processes if we are going to incorporate in the comp plan? You know what I mean? Why do we say, okay, this is the final product, and then when we revise the comp plan, we incorporate that, and we approve the whole package? I don't know.
That's not how our comp plan is set up right now. It does the neighborhood plans, and the neighborhood plans are adopted. So we've adopted McGaw and
So it has to be adopted before we incorporate it to the comp plan.
We would have to adopt it separately. We'd have to adopt the neighborhood plan.
But can we adopt it at the same time we are doing the comp plan?
Yes, you could wait to adopt it.
No,
The neighborhood plan will stand as standalone, the same way that North Stoner as a standalone document, and McGaw is a standalone.
No, I get it, but
yes,
because
so
we are doing this neighborhood plan because we need to incorporate them in the comp plan, you know what I mean? So my question is, why do we need to approve it before the comp plan? Why we cannot approve it when we are doing the comp plan? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, we aren't
guess.
gonna have that, I mean, the next round for minor comp plan amendments doesn't start until March, right?
We could bring it, at the earliest we could do is bring it forward like I mean, there's some flexibility about our 2 times. We can push it a little bit sooner into the year, for the 2 times. But yes, we can only do the minor comp plan amendment twice per year, that process, and the neighborhood plan is adopted as a minor comp plan.
Oh, this is why, because it's a minor, you treat it like a minor amendment to the
That's
comp
how,
plan.
yes, it is.
So this is,
All right,
I didn't know that part.
let's move on to Greenfield.
Okay, so I want to spend a little bit of time just kind of setting the stage. Greenfield has, of course, been a very challenging neighborhood plan for staff. We've received a lot of opposition, and there's been a strong preference from the neighborhood for no development. And if development happens, the preference has been for lower densities and still maintaining the farming areas, maintaining the current character of the neighborhood. And then we've heard a lot of issues with the current traffic conditions, and as I'm sure you all know, the stormwater management issues are significant in Greenfield. So want to keep that, we're just keeping that at the front line, at the front of our thinking, and in response to what we have heard consistently since the very beginning, we have reduced the residential density. We have added additional open space that is particularly buffering between the existing residential development and new development. We've worked to preserve all the significant open space areas that we can. We've included the neighborhood land use concept, which I'm sure that we've introduced before with you all. New collector roads are proposed that would remove some of the non-residential traffic off of Sain and Irish where possible. We have ended up reducing the commercial and business areas and then limiting them to the east of the railroad tracks. And we've limited any impacts onto the existing neighborhood that we can. Now, I feel like we're in a really good spot now after this last steering committee meeting that we had last month. We have some tacit agreement with the steering committee. I think that there's a level of comfort where we are with this land use plan that I'm gonna kind of walk through. But I just kind of want to set the stage here.
Are you gonna kind of go through each of these bullets and kind of what they mean?
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
sure, yeah. Any other questions about kind of setting the stage here? Then just briefly, I'm gonna go through a couple of different, these 2 scenarios that we brought to the community back in April. I just bring these out, I'm not gonna spend any time here, but just to show that, you know, we've been we've tried to bring higher densities around in the neighborhood. This one is showing a significant amount of neighborhood mixed use, some commercial, a little bit more business park, some more high density to the south. We have went through a couple of iterations here. This was the open house meeting in the steering committee in June, and then at the open house meeting in July 31st. Just kind of showing you some of the iterations that we have been working through with the neighborhood, and trying to find a place where there's some level of comfort, I guess. So, this was the plan that Brad, refresh my memory, this is what we ended up taking to the steering committee in September. We ended up with.
Yeah, this was.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is what we brought to the steering committee as a potential scenario, incorporating the feedback from the July open house, and had this as a discussion starting point. This one kind of doesn't change a whole lot from here to the current concept, but there was a bit of feedback from the steering committee at this meeting. But yeah.
Brad, are we presenting the current concept? Because I just wonder, as a person who's been on this committee and been involved, is it maybe just easier to go over the current one? Because to your point, I think it's just 2 areas that are hashed differently.
Yeah, we could.
Deanna and Brad, I don't want to ruin your flow if you were going over something different.
This is where we ended up after the steering committee. So
thank you.
It might be helpful to just kind of walk through some of those compromises here. So basically, to the west of the tracks, the west of Syene, we are only showing medium density residential, low density residential, or the farming and agrihood. So that's really stepped down some of the residential density to the western part of the neighborhood. We're showing one area of the agrihood or low density residential. The neighborhood or the steering committee felt that they liked the option to have that mix of agrihood and low density opportunities still in this particular area. We've added some additional open space. As you'll see, some open space along here as kind of a buffer too between some of the existing neighborhoods. The agrihood kind of helps to do that too. You're seeing significant open space that was really important to the neighborhood. Oops, in the cyan color here, you can kind of see the wetlands. The neighborhood has quite a few wetlands. Under our comp plan, wetlands are required to have a 300-foot buffer. So there's a significant amount of open space still in the neighborhood. I talked about the agrihood. 2 new collectors that there's collector A that would come off the proposed roundabout, so Irish Lane would swing up along collector A. There was a request to shift collector A farther to the north so it does not impact this existing residential. So this is some existing residential. You can see that based in comparison to previous versions, we've lost the neighborhood mixed use or the commercial in here. The commercial is shifted just farther to the east. So the collector A would hopefully take some of the through traffic off of Irish Lane, because you can see that Irish Lane would actually swing up and not come straight through. Eventually, we would think that collector A would swing back down to Irish Lane at some point.
Deanna, do you have a version of this map that shows the existing neighborhoods separate from whatever additional planned?
Well, the existing neighborhood is most of that yellow.
Oh, sorry, I don't know.
Is that your question, goes what's there now?
Yeah, like how much of that yellow is there now and how much is future?
I'll walk you right through it. It's all of this. This is all existing residential. You can kind of see where the existing lot lines are showing up, but all of this is the existing.
Where were those little gray lines?
This is all existing. This is existing in here. So pretty much all of this exists, all of this general area where my cursor is, are existing single family.
which is why we can't put the density next to the transportation corridor, because that area is already settled.
Yes, right now this is a challenging neighborhood. These are some fairly high quality wetlands that go into the Wabisa wetland complex. These also eventually work through, so it's a challenging corridor.
So this is going to go back before your time. Actually, I think, well, Dave may remember this. When we did the original comprehensive plan, there was a proposal to have a linear park that went all the way from Highway 14, actually past Fish Hatchery Road. Yeah, and it would be almost all the property south of the power lines. And at some point that was changed because of a couple of reasons. One is on the other side of the power line, you can't gravity sewer because you'd have to go uphill. But I had also put some money in the capital improvement plan, I think when I was mayor in 2011 or 2010 for some property acquisition to buy some of the farmland that would eventually be part of that linear park. Now, it appears to me in the last few years that I've been back that all hide nor hair of the linear park has been expunged from the city records. So do you have any recollection of that? Have you seen anything about it?
Oh, yes.
Actually, it still exists in the CIP.
Yeah, no, it's still there.
Well, but see, it would be, the area that we are talking about would be what you're proposing some development for.
Right, so in working through with the steering committee and the community, right, the Moraine Edge Park would swing right through here.
Right.
Yes, you are correct. And we've been trying to balance finding a place for new development and then still trying to continue to have some of that green space, right? And where we ended up is here with a corridor that would link through here with the power lines and a park here, but without trying to explore that whole corridor, right? We're trying to get development in the area that's reasonable. So we're trying to we're doing a balancing act here, Jay.
And I'll add that instead of, the thinking here is that instead of, having a 1,000-foot wide swath of open space through here is having a green linkage between high quality areas of open space, like, high quality wetlands, and then linking it through, what is this, maybe a 200-foot corridor or something, linking it using green, like effectively a greenway, and linking open spaces through that greenway as an implementation of the Moraine Edge Park.
We think there's a way to actually get from Terra Vesa all the way to South Stoner, Prairie neighborhood we just talked about, and ultimately connect to the Quarry Ridge area. Obviously, will take quite a bit of time, but from a conversation that staff had, CIP was modified to reflect that current thinking that we would have some varying level of width of green space. It would probably meander to a certain degree, but the point would be is to connect certain landmarks or recreational areas within the city from east to west.
Okay.
And that was obviously adopted with the most recent version of the CIP. So it does still exist. It's obviously been modified since perhaps the original thinking years ago, but I think it still could be, if and when it comes to realization, a pretty cool feature for a city of our size geographically to potentially have a moraine edge, trail or recreational area that connects multiple different neighborhoods and recreational points of interest across the city.
Definitely on our parks radar. We haven't had a lot of discussion, but it is on our radar, something we'd like to see.
Well, ultimately, some of those houses are probably in a wetland.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're like, I mean, there are a number of people living on Sain Road and other properties over there that have sump pumps that run 24/7 because they can't keep the water out even in the wintertime. It's just constant water coming in. And so that will ultimately have to be dealt with at some point. But one of the things...
I'd like to jump back into the plan, but please feel free to...
One of the things that I wish we we need to get some sort of expert in to talk about water. And one of the things that we had talked about years ago was that lawns, nice green Kentucky bluegrass lawns, are not particularly good for dealing with stormwater. The water just runs right off. And we actually have the same problem with a lot of farmland. So one of the things that needs to happen in this area over time, and we're not going to be able to solve it in this plan, but we need to design a neighborhood that's designed for dealing with stormwater, and that's going to cost a lot of money. And I know there has been proposals that the residents have rejected that would take it to the other side of the railroad tracks, but that's not. That's not the long-term solution. The long-term solution is building, like tree wells and other types of infrastructure that can actually deal with the stormwater on site instead of continually trying to get rid of it.
New development would be required to manage their stormwater on site. While I'm not a stormwater engineer, and I'll preface my comment with this, my understanding from talking with staff is that future development in this area, in particular west and northwest of existing greenfield, the stormwater that is currently running from those parcels towards greenfield could likely or potentially be required, obviously, to be contained within the development area, and development could potentially reduce the amount of stormwater that is currently flowing into greenfield.
Absolutely. And that's why I think having somebody with that expertise who could explain this to these residents, ahead at the beginning would be helpful, because everyone's understandably so. I represented that area for 20 years, and the stormwater issues there are, under our current regulations, that would never have been built.
No.
I don't even think Dane County would have approved that, because I was approved under Dane County's authority, and I don't even think Dane County would approve that today.
When we look at the historical data, a lot of those were built in the 50s during a relatively dry period of time. And, if they had come along now, they wouldn't have been built. They're all that different, but we've looked at the historical rainfalls for that area and the analysis of the stormwater, and they were built during a historically dry period. And that's why they're built.
That's true.
I can't.
But the elevations are an issue there too. I mean, over on the western side in the last neighborhood plan we were talking about elevations of about 1,040 to 1,100 feet. Some of these areas are less than 900 feet. It's almost 200 feet lower.
Yeah.
And so the ground, you start encroaching into the water table.
Absolutely. The point is well taken. I think it's a very strong point that we need to have discussions about that, but I would like to get back to the plan, to the map. Deanna, would you like to continue walking us through?
I think
Or
One
would
thing
you
I
prefer to go
did
to
just want to point out, we talked about Collector A as pulling, with the potential to pull some of the traffic off of Irish Lane, some of the through traffic off Irish Lane. And then we're also proposing another Collector B that would be away from the existing neighborhood, but could take some of the traffic, that could help to take some of the through traffic off to reduce some of the traffic issues for the neighborhood. We're showing medium high density along, and we would extend Blaney Road all the way down to Byrne Road is what's shown here. The plan right now would refer to a potential interchange at Irish. At this point, staff and the consultants just don't have enough information to be sure exactly the location of that interchange, if it's possible, when it's possible. So the neighborhood traffic and roadway connections would be based, that would be sufficient to allow a future interchange, but also function without a future interchange would be our idea. So in the purplish color, that would be a potential of a business park or medium high density residential business park or high density residential, and then same thing here, business park or high density residential, and then following down. This is a real high point here along on the Jones farm that we just set aside as a high quality environmental feature. So Brad, what did I miss?
I think you hit the high points. Something that I want to highlight, that another thing that was kind of iterative that we changed in this most recent version is an earlier version of the concepts had road connections going into West Hill Drive.
Yep.
And there was a huge blowback on that. So, yeah. So we removed those, and that was one of the reasons we put in Collector B, was so that there would be some north-south through connectivity, at least for the new development area. And we did add trail connections to those dead ends so that there's at least multimodal active transportation connections between the new and existing neighborhood. The one connection we did leave in is Old Indian Trail, coming in and meeting up with the new development there. So
you're not proposing Old Indian going all the way to Kane Road?
We are not.
No, the reason for that is to limit the easy, I guess the straight path through traffic is the existing Old Indian is not built to handle any significant volume of traffic. There's no sidewalks. It's a narrow road. It really shouldn't have significant traffic going through there. So.
Gotcha.
This is Old Indian Trail.
Oh, that one, okay.
Mm-hmm. It connects into Said.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't feel it was a good idea to connect it straight through to Kane.
I see. Well, I mean, the only people who are gonna use it are the people who live there.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be like a regional collector street, but.
I have a question. So for that whole section on the bottom left corner, that bottom left low density is not currently developed. Is that correct, or am I mistaken?
This?
The southwest, that whole new neighborhood there.
Yeah,
Oh, no, that's all, there's a mix of large lots. There's a mix of agriculture and then some large kind of estate lots.
Is there a reason that we cannot do more density in that area? Because there is a lot of
Because
shielding.
the people came unglued.
But it's shielded from the neighborhood. Like there's significant low density shielding it from the
They still
neighborhood.
came unglued.
Yeah, no, Gabriela, I think this is a very good compromise if we want to move forward with it.
My other question is medium density What is our medium density is super low in units per acre.
It's still 5 to 9, right?
What does that actually look like in reality? Like, is that townhouses? Is that
It certainly
single
could
lot line?
be. It's certain.
Right over Seminole Highway, Cathedral Point, or down Seminole and Lacey. Those along there.
Yeah, Crescent Crossing would fall under about medium.
Yeah, but don't those are still single family homes though, right?
Duplexes.
And
yeah.
duplexes.
Yeah, that's gonna be single-family home.
They're not, so we're not looking at really realistically townhomes or any sort of like fourplexes or anything like that. in those
Probably
orange
not.
regions.
But okay, but if we change the zoning code next year, we are gonna revise it. We are gonna, the idea is to incorporate duplexes, quadruplex in low density. This is the idea, isn't it? Because this is where everyone is moving forward, you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
allow that diversity.
The thing is, with a fourplex building, you're not gonna build that in a low-density area because at 4 dwelling units per acre, that's gonna be 1 acre. So, it would be just one building with a lot of space around it. So that doesn't really help the cause. At 9 dwelling units per acre in the medium density, that gets you about a 5,000 square foot lot, which is slightly larger than most of what's in Terra Vista. I think most of the Terra Vista lots are in the 4,000, 4,500 square foot range.
So we're talking about like single lot line
It would be single family homes typically is what they're gonna build in the medium density residential. You could build row houses, like you could build what is that along Cheryl?
Gardens.
Yeah, the gardens.
That's
You could
probably
build-
a little higher density than.
It would be slightly higher, yeah.
Yeah, because I do think townhouses are just such a wonderful thing, and I understand that there's challenges with townhouses that are outside of our control. But speaking as somebody that lives in a townhouse, that I'm sure is probably in the medium high. I live on Mickelson, so it's probably medium high or even high. I don't know. It's just a wonderful place to live, and I think a lot of people would desire those types of opportunities. And if this precludes anything even remotely like that, it seems like a real shame to me.
It is, but one of the things that I tried to emphasize to the residents who are there when they talk to me about this is that we're working on this neighborhood plan now. There's not gonna be anything built here for 20 years.
Yeah.
So by that time, things will change. And some of the current property owners down there will turn over, and it'll be a different mindset than what we have right now.
Oh, Nicole has a question.
Nicole, yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in because I've spent many hours on this topic, talking to a lot of different residents. And I think I just want to reiterate too that, to Jay's point, we will have that turnover. And I do think there is a trust issue with this neighborhood, and then there is a balance issue that we have to strike. And so I do think with the, to Julia and Deanna's points earlier, I think this was a decent compromise for the steering committee that, like, I think some folks who were there, they would have no high density on this map. And so I do think that this might be the limit of tolerance at this point, because Brad and Deanna have gone back and forth quite a few times on this map. So I personally, just hearing from residents, I don't know that going back and asking for higher density to be added is fruitful whatsoever.
No, and I respect that. I'm just talking.
Well, it just,
Making a point.
it just doesn't,
Which is fair.
there's no high density there
That is fair.
right now.
There is some.
There is high density.
There's a
Okay.
yeah, and there's
But even getting that, Joe, was a feat. It's not that much. Your point.
on Curry Court, there's actually 3 4-unit buildings.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I used to live in one. In fact, I got a letter of commendation from the police department for help that I did on an investigation in the one that I lived in. But regardless of that, so right now, we have we can't sewer this for a long time because the sewer comes down the rail line and it ends, I think that sewer interceptor ends right about Lacey Road. They may have had to extend it past for the new property on the
I think
Hartung.
we're gonna have to extend for Hartung
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, but but Hartung is in the way, the Hartung agriculture facility that they're still operating, that is in the way between that sewer interceptor and this neighborhood. So until Hartung decides they want to do something, I just don't see how we're gonna be able to run that sewer interceptor any further south.
So that's why this is like this is a much farther into the future plan, whereas South Center Prairie is presumably potentially something more near term.
Hopefully.
Is this, if sewer was ran, could it have gravity feed from these high density areas or the lower one?
So when,
because I don't like lift pumps.
when we did the Cyan interceptor, Paul Woodard, who is our public works director at the time, told me that it was being installed deep enough that we could gravity sewer all the way down to the city limit in Oregon, near Oregon.
It must be deep.
But the answer to your question more specifically, Dave, we're working on the utility pieces right now to further understand what areas can be gravity fed. And yes, the comp plan, that is the goal and intention of gravity.
One last thing, I'll shut up. Mark Jones made the comment, the Blaney Road extension you see coming down there, indicating that there were springs in there for the of Murphy Creek and some of those that would preclude putting a road through there. I don't. This is one man telling me this that's lived there his whole life.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of wetlands in here. I don't have a specific study that says where exactly the springs are. This is all wetlands in here. I'm not going to say that Blaney Road is a done deal based on our information today.
Could be a very expensive road to build if you have to.
It would be a very expensive road to build because developers don't like to build roads when there's nothing on either side.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, you don't have anything,
Okay. Any last comments?
Dave, to your question about how far south sewer is, I was just looking at the city's maps, and it's Cyan and Lacey.
Okay, thank you, Chad.
But they must have extended it because we're building south of Lacey right now. So how are they connecting to that?
It is in other areas south of Lacey, but I think this area, and I'd have to confirm with engineering, I think Nobel Highfield Reserve is actually served by a different.
No,
we can take this offline.
That goes somewhere else. I'm just talking about right where the railroad track is.
Let's continue on. We can talk about that offline. That's very in the weeds.
Okay, what is next?
Yeah.
I was just, there's a quick slide about steering committee coming up in November for South Stoner Prairie, steering committee that we have scheduled for Greenfield in December. We do have on our schedule a public open house for the neighborhood plans and one more steering committee for each of the neighborhood plans, basically to adopt the neighborhood plans. And then to go through the adoption process, which is essentially the minor comp plan adoption.
Okay, I need to visualize because I need time frame for all of this.
Yeah, I don't have a time frame tonight.
But we need to put a time frame for it because we have been working with it for more than a year, and it's good for you guys also to because you cannot continue working in this plan for 2 or 3 years. Eventually we need to decide this is it, and move forward. You know what I mean? And I think we have spent a lot of time. I think we have a good final product here. And I don't know. I am.
Well, there's no timeline yet.
Do you want me to go through what's happening at, what each of those kind of milestones, I guess what we're hoping to accomplish at each of those?
Sure.
Okay, so the next steering committee meeting for each one is going to be to review engineering and like the engineering and utilities analysis. And if there's any land use changes that would come out of that, that'll be what those steering committees are for. And then also to discuss goals, strategies, and actions that would make it into the plan document. The public open houses will be kind of to bring the final preferred land use plan after doing the engineering and utilities analysis and after working through the goals, actions, and strategies. It would be bringing those two things to the public for one more open house. And then consultants would draft the plan and we'd get a draft plan together. And that's what then we'd bring that draft plan to the steering committee essentially for hopefully the recommendation from the steering committee. And then we go through the referral and adoption process.
Okay, so if we need a minor amendment to the comp plan, we have to do it by the spring of 25.
Unless you wanted to wait longer, but yeah, we would.
Because
Apparently the mayor wants it to be done yesterday.
No, because the next round of amendment is in September. 2025, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we would have to either do it in spring or in September.
Yeah.
Take it through.
Yeah.
Could we prioritize doing it in spring and not letting Greenfield or Stoner Prairie go until September? Like, what does staff need to be successful to make spring a firm timeline commitment?
I'm gonna let Brad take that one, I think.
So I guess
I don't know.
I'm struggling to see where
I am losing my patience.
So the steering committee meetings that after the draft plan, I think those we're hoping would be in January and February. And then the referral and adoption process is 3 to 4 months based on how we mapped it out. So we'd have a draft plan by then.
For the referral and adoption?
No,
Yeah,
because
so
we
it
put
would
it in,
be
we put
referred
it in April, what is in April? We put the,
I mean, there's some flexibility.
and then by June, we can have those plan approved by June.
Yes, for sure, June or
And
July.
not September. Because
Yeah.
if we go to September, we approve this in December.
That's
You know what
how
I mean?
that's how.
I think it's clear that we would like to move forward with this as fast as possible, but obviously there's lots of steps between then and now.
Deanna and Brad can take the conversation back to MSA, the consultants who are helping coordinate this.
And we'll get a
project, and
schedule
see
put
if,
together.
we can get enough
Yeah.
needed schedule.
I think the message has been received. Anything else? Anything else you'd like to share?
Not myself.
Any other final questions?
What is the meaning of life?
We can add that to the agenda for next time.
Great.
Please don't.
Moving on to item number 7, announcements. Our next committee of the whole meeting is November 20th, 2024, and please note that that is not the normal day. We moved it because of Thanksgiving holiday. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alder Allen and seconded by Maldonado. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:26 p.m.